Alright, so today is another brand new tutorial. Today we are going to be talking about still images. Yes, I know, I've been talking about videos all this time, but I have not been talking about still images. This is going back to the roots of my career as a photojournalist. I started out in still photography, and I still have a place in my heart for still photography, as cheesy as that sounds. I've had many people ask me, what's the best way that I enjoy telling stories? Is it with stills or video? And I simply just say both. Some stories are best told as video, and some stories are best told as stills. It just all depends on what the story is. So I don't have a favorite, kind of like my kids. I don't have a favorite kid. Um, I love them both. Today I'm going to be showing you just the basics on still photography and how simple retouching can be. It's very simple, it's very quick. Now, disclaimer, you want to get it right in camera. Getting it right in camera will reduce the amount of time that you have to take on your pictures tremendously. And I mean tremendously. Getting it right in camera essentially is like you could post it on Facebook or Twitter or YouTube or what have you, and it's going to look good. That's getting it right in camera. Getting your levels, getting your exposure, getting everything right in camera. That tutorial will come later on where I can teach you how to get it right in camera. Now, let's go ahead and move on to the tutorial of Photoshop. Starting out, I go to Adobe Bridge for all of my photography sorting and things such as sorting photos and organizing photos and viewing photos. It's easy, it's quick, it's just really easy to do in Bridge, and it's easy transition over to Photoshop. And your computer may have a hard time or may not even be able to read raw files, which is these NEF files here. That's raw photos. So your computer may not be able to read that. That's fine. Bridge can. Adobe Bridge. So we'll go ahead and go straight into it. This was a shoot that I did with my youngest son, Nathaniel. Just wanted to show off how cute he was. And so here he is in all of his cuteness, being a chef. If you want to know what my aperture was at f4, and my shutter speed was 1/100th of a second, and it was auto white balance and was an ISO of 1250. And let's see, my focal length, I can tell you here in a second. I want to say it was 98 millimeters. Yes, 98 millimeters. The lens was a 70 to 200 millimeter. Is a 2.8 lens. It's a manual focus, if you care to know. But this kind of goes back on how I choose to take photographs. I tend to use long lenses for portraits just because long lenses do not give you distortions. Anything above 85 millimeter and below 200 millimeter is not really going to distort your photographs. Plus, having a long lens compresses your background. So as you can see with my son Nathaniel here, he's sitting pretty far up from the kitchen, and I can pop up a picture of what the overview of the scene looked like. Anyway, I took a behind the scenes shot, but the background is pretty far back, and with shooting with a long lens, it compresses that background and also gives you that shallow depth of field all at the same time. So that's why I choose longer lenses, if you want to know what my thought process was behind this. And I was also shooting in manual mode. I'm not sure if there's any other mode. Just kidding. But I only shoot manual mode typically. I just feel weird shooting any other mode. Alright, I'm sure you guys are all bored with all these details. Alright, so I'm going to double click it on the picture I want. And you can already see my levels aren't great, but the major tones I've got in there. My highlights are a little blown out, but they're not too bad. first thing that we want to do is we want to bring up our basic exposure in Adobe Raw. So we're going to bring down the exposure just a little bit, not much, and then we're going to bring our highlights down just a little bit. And this is where my color blindness tends to, what do you want to say, be a crutch for me. Not a crutch, but a problem for me, rather, is with white balance. But luckily, he was wearing lots of white. And so what I can do is I can take this eyedropper over here, and I can click on a mid-tone, and so say like right in there, this good white tone area, and just click it, and it gives us the tone of it. And it's a little bit too warm for me, so I'm probably going to bring the temperature down just a hair, not too much, and that tends to be where I think it should be, and I think that looks good. So then we'll bring our shadows up a little bit. With children, you want to keep your shadows light. You don't want anything like majorly dramatic. And then we'll bring our clarity up, which will crunch those shadows just a little bit, but we'll fix that later. So that's pretty much the essential part that you need to do in your Adobe Raw. So we'll just go down here and we'll hit open, and it's going to open it up into the regular Photoshop window that you're used to seeing. And if we just hit Command 0, it will resize that perfectly for us. So immediately I'm noticing that we need to do some retouching to his face. Not a lot. It's not a lot at all. So I zoomed in. Sorry, I should have told you that. Hit Command and then you hit the plus button to zoom in, and then if you hit the Command minus button, that zooms you out. So if you zoom in and you hold the space bar and then you click, and it brings up your move tool and you can move it in on the picture. So immediately I can see that we've got some spots right here. I think it was just dirt on his face or food on his face from him eating. We just did this on the spur of the moment, this picture, so he wasn't exactly ready. So if you hit the key J, that brings up your Band-Aid tool. And we're moving along over there, not where I want to go. So you got the Band-Aid tool. And the Band-Aid tool is a little bit too big, so I'm going to bring it down because we just want to make these minuscule changes to this picture. So if you just go in and you click where you want the spot removal to be taken care of, it'll just take them right out for you. So I'm going to put this in fast forward motion while I fix these. Get back to you in a second. Okay, so we took care of those spots on his face. Looks really good. But I am also noticing that we've got like a stray string right here, so we'll take care of that. And then up here I'm noticing that this is a little messed up, so I'm going to see if this will fix it. This may not fix it, but we'll see if this fixes this area. Did pretty good. Just fix that area right there. Yeah, at first glance no one's really going to notice that. So then here's the strand of hair that you can take care of. He's got my problem of having long hair grow on his ears. See that right there? I did not like that change. So we'll get back to that and I'll show you how to fix that. This one right here is long. And there. And then with this, you can go to the clone tool, which the clone tool is this stamp here. You can hit the option key to bring up this target right here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up the target and I'm going to bring this brush down size quite a bit, and then we can just retouch that just ever so slightly to get rid of it, and we'll retouch there too, and right there too while we're at it. Okay, so moving on to the eyes. Now his eyes look great, but I'll go ahead and tell you, when you get it in post, it tends to look a little bit different. And then like when you also print, it also prints a little bit darker and you lose a little bit of your saturation. So to bring that back, what we'll do is we'll go to the sponge tool. And then once we get to the sponge tool, we're going to change this to saturation. And we're going to change our flow to 25%. 25%. And we're just going to go and saturate his eyes just a little bit, not overboard, not going crazy. So something like that. Just very minimum change. So now what we're going to do is retouch around the edges of his eyes. So we're going to go in here, go to the burn tool, and this one I like to keep pretty low. So I've got it at 15%. And we're just going to go burn just the edges right here. Not a whole lot and not going crazy with it, just enough to make his eyes pop a little bit. So there we are. And there we are. Now, his eyes are a little bit dark for me. So what I'm going to hit is I'm going to hit the Command M, and that brings up our curve. In our curve, we can bring up the exposure just a little bit, just like that. And yes, our highlights are getting blown up, but that's not what we're worried about. So here is your history window. You can go here and you can hit that, and that brings you back to where you originally were before you did the curves. So you hit this here, and it's going to get this history brush right here. That's what that is a history brush. And then you're going to come in here and you're going to hit Y. It's going to bring up your history brush, and we're going to bring up the history brush just a little bit. I think it's already too big. So there's our history brush. We're going to bring it up, and it's already at 25%, so that's good. And we're going to go in, and we're just going to just do the shadows just a little bit so they're not so overpowering. And make his face stand out a little bit. So there's that. And the 25%, it just allows you to do it just ever so subtly. So now we're going to do another subtle change with our clone tool. So if you just go to your clone tool and bring it up about that size, and we're going to bring this down to about 10%. Not much at all. So then now we're going to use this area to kind of help get rid of those bags under his eyes, the shadows under his eyes. Now for a little kid, they're not going to be that bad. For adults, a little bit more. And then on this side too. You're just going to use this to just help fade that out just a little bit. And so see, there you go. And if you want to see what the changes that we did to the bags under the eyes did, here's what it looked like before. There's what it looks like after. Might be a little too much, but for demonstration purposes, it'll work just fine. Alright, so now the eyes are good. The skin is retouched a little bit. Now, this is where you as a photographer nowadays live in a great time. We can go in and you can soften the face. What would take me hours sometimes to do, you can now do it just with the drag of a slider. So what you want to do is you want to go into filter, and you're going to go into Neural filters, I think is what it's called. I think it's a beta version right now. And so what it's going to do is automatically going to create a new layer on top of that, and it's going to detect a face in there. It's crazy. It automatically detects the face for you. I mean, it's an amazing piece of software. So this is the skin smoothing. So we're going to click that button and we're going to bring up the skin smoothing, and we're just going to bring it up just a little bit. You don't have to bring it up much. You don't want it to look fake. So probably about 15 will work just fine. Let's see how it looks before. 15 might be a little bit too much, so we'll bring it down to about 7. See how that looks. Yeah, that looks pretty good. So what we can do is we can just hit OK, and it'll save it. And as you can see, it automatically just saves it as a new layer. So you can look and see what it did, and that's exactly what it did for you. And then what you can even do is bring down your opacity just a little bit, because it might be a little too much for you. And so then there's the changes, very subtle changes. And then let's back up and see what we look like, and then we'll crop it in. Oops, not what I wanted to do. Bring that up like that, and then bring it up like that. And then I like to add vignettes to my portraits. So I'm going to go in here to Camera Raw. Again, oops. So one thing I forgot to mention is you want to come in here and you want to select all the layers, right click, and then do merge layers. And then you want to go in and retouch your vignette, or do your vignette rather. So you're going to go down to optics, and then you want to go to, let's see, vignette is right here, and you just want to bring the vignette down all the way is what I normally do. And you can change your midpoint, but I think the midpoint looks good right about there. And I can show you what that looks like before and after. There's the before and there's the after. And that's simply how you retouch a portrait. And then you can just go in and save it like normal. I'll go in there and save it to my computer, and we are already in the folder. We'll just call this one Nathaniel Cute Cook. And I always just save mine all the way at maximum, and there we are. Alright, well, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I hope you gathered a lot from it, and I hope you are able to confidently retouch your images and work through Photoshop. Like I've said before, just play around with it and get to know it. Alright, take care.